Hello, it's Harry here. In this video, I want to talk about a few Linux scripts for SAS users. The first script I want to talk about is a script that can extract some pages from the Lst files. So let's take a look at some Lst files in this folder. Okay, so there are 3 Lst files here. Okay, this is table 1. So it's a table with 2 pages. And it's the same thing for the other 2 tables. Okay, so sometimes when people review tables, they want to print them out, but they don't want to print all the pages. They only want to print out the first page of each table to see if there are some obvious mistakes. So we're going to develop a script for that purpose. It's actually quite easy to do. So let's call the script getPage. Okay, so we're going to use the cron shell. Okay, so let's do the shebang line here. Okay, so those Lst files, they are created with the SAS option page size equals 52, so we need to use that information. So let's define a variable ps equal to 52. Okay, then we're going to do a loop, and we're going to use the head function. So let's do this for loop. Okay, and we have the head function here. Okay, and we have the file name. So this means that we want to take the first 52 lines of each file, and we send it to an output file. Let's call it combine. Okay, so that's it. It's a very simple script. So let's give execute permission to the user. And let's run the script. Okay, so let's take a look at the file, combine. Okay, so we have the first page of table 14.1. We have the first page of table 14.2, and we have the first page of 14.3. So it works. The next script I want to talk about is a script that can calculate the size of some files. So in FDA submission, there is a restriction on the size of the SDTM and ADAM datasets. So those datasets cannot be larger than 5 gigabytes. So it is useful to develop a script that can check if the size of a file is larger than 5 gigabytes. So let's do that. Let's call the script get size. Okay, we're going to use the bash. So let's do the shebang line here. Okay, and let's do a loop. Okay, first we need to define a variable size. So this is going to be the size of the file in byte. So let's do size equal to, we're going to do command substitution here. So let's do okay, and then we do a pipe here. We're going to use awk to print out the size. So let's do print $5. Okay, so the $5 means the 5th column. So if we go back to the folder and we do a ls-l, so you can see the 5th column is the size of the file in byte. Okay, so let's go back to the script. Now we need to define another variable. This variable is for the size, but in gigabyte. So we're going to do some calculation here. So let's do size gigabyte. and equal to $. So we're gonna do a command substitution here again. We need to use AWK to calculate the size. So we need to bring in some variables. So in AWK, if we want to use some variable, we can use the -v option, and let's bring in the conversion factor of byte to gigabyte. Okay, so I already got the number here, so let me copy the number. Okay, we need another variable, and that's the size of the file in byte. So it's gonna be size equal to the $size. So that's what we defined in the line above. Okay, so let's do use the begin function of AWK to print out the result. So we use begin. Okay, so we do print, and we have size divided by the conversion factor. Okay, so now we have this size in gigabyte. We just need to do some conditional statements. So if the size is greater than 5 gigabyte, we do something. Otherwise, we do something else. So let's see. We have the size. Okay. If the size in gigabyte is greater than 5, then we print out this statement. We print out the actual size of the file. Okay. Otherwise, we print out this statement. Okay, so that's it for this script. So let's test if it works. Let's give the user execute permission. Okay, let's check the size of those XPT files shown in the screen. So let's do okay, so you can see all of those XPT files are less than 5 gigabytes. So it works. So we're going to discuss 4 different ways of creating transport files. So in SAS, there are 2 versions of transport files. There's a version 5 and there's a version 8. So let's see how we can create a version 5 transport files first. So the first way of doing that is to use the export engine. So let's see how we do it. We use the lib name, and let's call it XPT file. And we use the export engine and just specify the path. Okay, so we call the transport file class1.xpt because we're going to use the SAS help class dataset. So we use a proc copy. In is SAS help, out is XPT file, and mem type is data, and let's select class. Okay, so that's the first type of transport file that we create. The second way of doing it is to use the proc C part. So let's do proc C part. Okay, and file equal to. Now let's just specify the path. Okay, the third way of doing it is also using proc C part, but we're going to use the no compress option. So by default, the proc C part we use compression, but let's specify the no compress option as a third way of creating the transport file. So let's copy this. Okay. Then let's call it class 3, and we use the no compress option. Okay, so the fourth way of creating transport files is for the version 8 transport files. So as we know, the version 5 transport files have some requirement on the SAS dataset. So the variable names cannot be longer than 8 characters. The variable label cannot be longer than 40 characters. And the character variable value cannot be longer than 200 characters. But for version 8 transport files, we don't have that restriction. So for example, you can have a very long variable name. So let's create a SAS dataset like that. Okay, now we have this very long variable name. Let's create the version 8 transport file for this one. We're going to use the macro %log to xpt. This is a SAS autocall macro, so we must use the option mautosource. Okay, so let's call this macro. So we have libref equals work, and we have the mem list equal to class, and we have file spec equal to, here we just specify the path. Let's call it class 4.xpt. Okay, so let's run the program. Okay, so there's no error in the log. It works. Okay. So the next script I want to talk about is a script that can check the transport files. So in SAS, there are 4 different ways of creating a transport file. So when you receive some transport files, the first thing of interest is to know how those transport files were generated. We can develop a script for that purpose. So in this folder, there are already some XPD files. Okay, so there are 4 XPD files. We can open the file and take a look. Okay, so the file starts with a string header record, library header record, and we can look at the other transport files. So this one starts with compressed. This one starts with lib control, and this one starts with header record lib v8. So, so the transport files starts with a certain string based on the way it was generated, and we can use that to create a script. So let's call the script get xpt. Okay, and we're going to use the cron shell. Okay, so let's do a loop here. Okay, we need to define some variables. So these variables are just going to be the first few characters of a transport file. So let me copy some code here. Okay, so we define 4 variables here. We're just extracting some characters from the beginning of the file with the head function. Okay, and after that we can do some testing to see if the beginning of the file is a certain string, and with that information we can determine how the transport file was generated. Okay, so let me copy some files here. Okay, I'm gonna put it here. Okay, so we have a few conditions. So let me show the line number here. Okay, on line 9, we're checking if the first 27 characters are header record and library, and if it is, then the file is generated with export engine. And similarly, we're checking a few other strings. So the line 12, we check if the string is header record label v8, and if it is, then the file is generated with the log2xpt.sas. On line 15, we're checking if the string is compressed. If it is, then the file is generated with the proxy port without the no compress option. And finally, we check if the first few characters are label control. If it is, then the file is generated with the proxy port with the no compress option. Okay, so let's run this script. Okay, we're gonna run this script on the transport files. Okay, so you can see the script give us the information about how those transport files were generated. So it's a very useful script. So the next script I want to talk about is about combining some files. So first I want to describe the question I'm trying to solve. So let's take a look at the files here. So there's a file called header file txt. So let's take a look. Okay, so it's some information about a SAS program. You have the author information, the date, the purpose. So I would like to put this header file on top of every SAS program. So one thing we notice is the program name. Right now it's blank. We need to use programming to fill in the program name. Okay, so we have 3 SAS programs here. Let's take a look. Okay, so you have the SAS program here, but there's no header. And same thing for the other 2. Okay, so we know in the Linux script we can use the cat function to combine 2 files. The only problem is that in the header file we don't have the program name, so we have to fill in the program name first. So the strategy is we will use the sed function to fill in the program name, and we will send that file to some temporary file, and we use cat function to combine the temporary file with the SAS program. Okay, so let's see how we can do that. Let's create a script. Let's call it get header. Okay. Okay, we're gonna use the curl shell. So let's see. We have. Okay, let's do a loop here. We're gonna use the mktemp function. So t file equal to. So what this function does is it creates a temporary file for us, and we can use the sed function to fill in the SAS program name in the header file, and we send the contents to this t file. So let's do that. So we are looking at the line that begins with program. Okay, and we're going to replace it by program followed by the file name. Okay, and we're running this command on the header file. We send it to this temporary file called the t file. Okay, so after that we can just use the cat command. So we need to have a folder to hold the new files. So let's call that folder new folder. Okay, so let's do new folder, and this is the file name. All right, so that's it. This is a script. So we're gonna need this folder called the new folder. Okay. So let's see. We create this folder, new folder. Okay, then we go to this new one. Okay, so let's run the script. Okay, so let's go to the folder called the new folder, and we have the 3 SAS programs here. Let's take a look. All right, see, we got the header here, and we have the file name here, and same thing for the other 2 programs. Okay, so it works very well. So imagine the situation that you have hundreds of SAS programs and you want to add header. This script can be very useful. All right, I think that's all I want to talk about in this video. I'm going to put this scripts in my GitHub account, and I will leave a link in the description of this video. If you find it useful, give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing. Thank you.